I'm gonna start singing the theme song
To
our podcast.
oh, dun, 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 dun.
Bam.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of the Sanctum Sanctorum podcast, where comics and Christ culture collide. I'm Chris, one of your hosts.
I'm Joey, the other one of your hosts. Thank you so much for listening. We are on episode 5. We've made it past 4, but we're not at 6 yet.
Season 7, I thought 7 was the, like the 7-year itch. I thought 7 was the hump you got to get over.
Is it? I don't know. I honestly, I've said this to Chris. Thank you guys so much for listening and commenting and viewing and all of that. Like, we love that you love what we're doing, but we're going to do it anyway because we love it more.
Yeah. I've had a couple of people say to me in the past couple of days, like, oh, I've checked out like some of your videos and I saw some of your podcasts. I really like what you're doing. And it's not people that I know, love these movies or read these books, and I'm like, oh, that's really nice of you. That's kind of fun that it's, reaching people that aren't necessarily like, oh, I just watched that movie and I wanted to hear your opinion on it.
It's doing the thing. And the thing of this episode is 2019's Captain Marvel. Chris, did you see this like opening night? Because here's another thing that I'd love to talk about as we address these and as they're appropriate. Did you go opening night, which used to be like Friday at midnight, but then it turned into like Thursday at 7. Did you go opening weekend to see this in the theater?
I definitely did not go opening weekend to see this. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater because it was right before COVID when we all stopped going to the theater. So I'm pretty sure at this point I was still going and seeing all comic book movies in the theater. So I definitely saw it in the theater, but even in 2019 for like before this, for like the 10 years prior, it had to be something really special for me to go opening night because that was just always so late and I felt like such an old man now. So it was like, it's got to be a character that I have a deep love for, or it's got to be a movie that I've been anticipating for years and years. Like I went opening night to Infinity War and Endgame, or opening weekend or opening night to those. Before that, I think the last time that I really remember going to an opening night was probably The Dark Knight.
Wow.
That's the last time I remember going to like the 11 p.m. show on the Thursday or Friday night. There probably were other opening weekend movies that I went to, but that's the one that I really remember.
The last opening night that I remember was Avengers, the 2012 Avengers, because there was a marathon and it was all phase 1 movies. And I spent, 18, 20 hours in a movie theater with a bunch of other dudes. And boy, did that smell ripe.
I'm sure.
But that was the last time I remember it being like the movie starting at midnight.
Yeah.
But I had the opposite. And it's funny that we're only 2 years apart age-wise. I had the opposite effect. I was at every opening first showing for a Marvel film from basically Avengers all the way through Endgame. I didn't care. It was just like, well, I might get to see the Infinity Stone. And I, unlike you, don't read spoilers, or at least at the time didn't read spoilers. And now I'm like, actually, Chris makes a lot of sense. I should just read this and decide whether I'm going to spend money or not.
Exactly, because if I read and I'm like, oh, this character shows up or this major event happened, this is a big plot point that to like the overarching story, then it's like, okay,
I'm
this
gonna
is worth
like it
going to see on the
anyway.
big screen. Otherwise, it's like I can wait till it comes out and find all the clips online.
It's really about
It
patience.
is about patience. I have a combination of having no patience and having a lot of patience because I need to know what happened immediately, but then I don't need to see it immediately because I've been like satiated. So I can wait for the streaming or the DVD release or whatever before I, actually get my eyeballs on it.
Well, speaking of not waiting, something I don't want to wait on much longer is our comic culture moment. Chris, what do you have for us this week?
So today, for the month of November, if you listen to our last episode, we covered Wonder Woman 1984, and as we said in this episode, we're covering Captain Marvel. Wow, we're covering Captain Marvel, which are two of a very small number of female-led comic book and superhero movies. So I thought it would be interesting today to talk about representation not only in comic books but comic book movies. And I feel like something that happens a lot, and this was a question that I had posed on my personal Facebook, and I want to get your opinion on it. I feel something that happens a lot is we'll take an existing character and then change them to represent a group that before that felt marginalized or was underrepresented in comic books. And you see this a lot, mostly with Marvel and DC. Does that seem more pandering to you, or does that seem
It's a
genuine?
really good question.
To take an existing character and shoehorning, a gender swap or a sexual orientation swap or whatever it is. So what are some of your thoughts on that before I get into some stuff?
I think it really boils down to the character.
Hmm.
An example where this works, in my opinion, again, as a cisgendered, heteronormative white guy, I think Miles Morales is the archetype of saying we want representation and we will take the character's powers and reinvent him in a new fashion. If all of a sudden Peter Parker was black, I think that does a disservice not only to the character, but also to the community because it says all we have to do is just copy and paste and there's no effort whatsoever to give this character a uniqueness or a touchstone within this community. It's just Elseworlds type. Oh yeah, in this corner of the area, it speaks to you, oh listener. And to me, that's just lazy. I honestly struggle with Sam Wilson being the new Captain America. Not because there shouldn't be a passing on of the shield, but because he was Falcon and what he represented for the black community. It would be like Wakanda just having a white guy in there. You would never do that.
Hmm.
And so I think there has to be a development of individual characters that can take some of the powers and some of the uniqueness of the character that we know, but then spin it into something unique in a way that's not just, all right, let's just swap out the race, swap out the gender, swap out the orientation so that you feel included. To me, that's not inclusion.
I agree 100% with that. Now, where I'll differ is in for the purpose of this dialogue, I don't count some of the characters you mentioned because, like you said, we're not taking Peter Parker and suddenly making him Petunia Parker, or we're not making
Right.
him black, we're not making him gay. We're creating a new character in Miles Morales that's taking over or coming alongside an existing mantle. Carol Danvers did that with Captain Marvel. She wasn't the first Captain Marvel. Sam Wilson does that with Captain America. There's been a couple. Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne have both done that, and Jim Gordon have all done that with the Batman title.
Sure.
So I have less of a problem with a a new fictional character taking over an existing mantle, almost as if it's a code name. My issue, one that I think was handled really poorly was Iceman.
Mm,
Now, after 60 years of storytelling, they really beat you over the head with Iceman is gay now, which would be fine, except, people in the queer community that I've spoken to about it all agree that this, or mostly agree that, well, it's representative in the idea that some people come to a realization of their sexuality or who they are later in life. This was so forced and
yeah.
obnoxious about it that it didn't seem natural and didn't feel genuine for most people and most fans of the character or of the X-Men, I would say. And I just feel like wouldn't there be a better reception from those communities if it was an original character that spoke to their history, their life experiences, what their world looks like through the eyes of someone who looks different or is different. But on the other hand, on the other side of that, I did have someone mention to me, don't you think it would be difficult, especially today, to introduce a new character like that? Would they reach the level of popularity that a character like Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Iceman, Captain America would, the level of popularity that those characters are at? Would a new character rise to those ranks because they don't have the, years and years of storytelling and movie and TV that behind them?
So you just nailed it. I think, yes, they would if you actually stuck with a consistency of developing good stories that come around these things. What you're basically saying is I will ride on the coattails of these characters because they're already established
Hmm.
as successful. But what you're missing is the years of Stanley writing Captain America, of Jack Kirby writing these characters week after week, series after series, developing a consistency, a faithfulness to these characters that now you get to write. Like you have the privilege to be able to shift and pivot, and you're not doing the work. That's really what it boils down to for me. And I recognize that there is such a limit for me as a white guy to say this, but it is sort of like, well, what are the responses from these communities when we just gender swap, when we just race swap, when we just orientation swap? Like if Iceman is a good indicator of that, I don't think they feel included. I don't feel like that, not from a genuineness standpoint. I feel like it's just like, all right, now we got it in black. Like there has to be more than
All
that.
it is an opportunity for these companies to say, look, you can see you now. I made you here.
Mhm.
It's like, well, I mean, I guess kind of, but not really. And then, again, like you're saying, as someone who's white and straight and male, it's difficult for me to fully understand, which is why I wanted to get, a diverse amount of opinions from, people in my circle.
Yeah.
But I also think it's true what you say, that you're not doing what you can with the characters. We'll use Superman as an example. So John Kent, Superman and Lois's son, was written as a gay character, and that's great, that's fine. But you have a new animated series called The Adventures of Superman, which is about Clark Kent again. All the animated movies about Superman that come out are about Clark Kent. James Gunn's new DC universe is about Clark Kent. We've had how many, different Supermen playing Clark Kent? Why aren't we developing an animated series or a live action series about John Kent and his journey of becoming Superman, standing in his father's footsteps, being a gay teen and coming to grips with that? And I feel like that would be much more representative than just being like, hey, Superman has a gay son, so he's cool. He's cool with us. That just, it's,
And wouldn't that just speak more to the fact that if we keep making Spider-Mans and we keep making Supermans and we keep making Batmans,
Mm-hmm.
there's a want for it. There's a desire. Like, that's product right there. It's not saying, oh, we want the white version of Batman. No, people like the character. There's nothing wrong with
No.
that. But I think you also have to balance, like, if there is a desire from another community to have representation, don't ask how we make that version of that. Ask, what is that community distinctive that will speak to that community? I think one of the things that Superman does so well is that when he came out, he was responding to a cultural need.
Mm-hmm.
When Captain America came out, that was very targeted towards World War II.
Right.
Like, there's a connection deep within us that's not, oh, he's a white soldier. It's he's standing up for what's right, and that is embodied in this. Now, if you're just going to say, well, we're just going to swap that into a different gender. Well, what is the need? What's the cultural need that the character is speaking to? Because that's what these characters do. They speak to our cultural need. And if you're just going to swap it so that there's inclusion, but the need isn't there, well, then all you're doing is, shoving the idea in a different skin, pun intended. And that's why these things don't last. It's because the need isn't
Not
there.
even last. It's why a lot of times they don't land and you see complaint. I don't think that the complaint comes from bigotry. I don't think that the complaint usually comes from racism or sexism. I think a lot of times the complaint comes from it's disingenuine. It's you're not treating these marginalized groups as with fair inclusion.
Right.
You're treating them with a lack of, it seems like a lack of care and a lack of respect. And I think that what you're saying is true. Like, maybe at the time we needed Superman, we needed Batman, we needed Spider-Man, especially in TV and film, to kind of put these characters onto more of a broad, to get a more of a broad fan base. And so that, the average comic book reader or the uninitiated could also enjoy the stories of these characters. But I think we've done that. How many, we've had, 9 different people play Batman. We've had 7 Supermen. We've had 3 or 4 Spider-Men. It just feels like, okay, like comic book movies, Marvel and DC especially, are so popular right now that people think that we're oversaturated with them. I think it's okay to not lean into your heavy hitters for a while and do a character that represents these communities more. Look at how well Black Panther did. Look at how well the first Wonder Woman did. These were things you hadn't seen before in a superhero movie, and they did really well and people really liked them and responded well to them. That should be the clue to, like, oh, we should maybe do this some more and not necessarily make another Batman, another Spider-Man. I love him as much as the next geek, but I also would like to see other characters get their time in the spotlight, and especially characters that allow everyone to continue to be a fan because they feel represented and they feel like they see themselves in a genuine way, not in a lazy way.
That's it. And we would love your thoughts on that in the comments.
Please,
Drop
yes.
us a comment or a like. Give us your thoughts about what you think about some of this inclusion conversation when it comes to our comics.
And also, as like we said, as 2 straight white males, tell us if we're not getting it. Tell us if we're wrong, if we need to come at it from a different angle. We really want to hear whatever opinions you have on this, good, bad, and indifferent. So please hit us up.
All right, buddy.
All right, my man, you ready to throw down and fight? This isn't gonna be like Jake Paul and Tyson, where we're gonna actually go at it here.
We will actually go at it, and I've got a plot synopsis that'll knock you for round 1 in this quote film. But you ready for this?
All right, hit me. I'm ready.
To quote the 90s, y'all ready for this?
All right,
Was that the 90s?
starting off bad. That was the 90s, but we're already starting off bad. All right, here we
You know,
go.
you know what? That's going to be the music behind this, and we'll probably be demonetized.
Jock jams,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, we won't do that. We'll cue the foreboding music. Here we go. In a galaxy where amnesia meets Power Girl, Carol Danvers, an Air Force pilot with a tendency towards rule-breaking and flat one-liners, must filter through the memories of the past, defeat the patriarchy of the present, and just get fans from one MCU film to the next in a film that should have been a Super Bowl commercial. Join us for the 90s-tastic blockbuster as we dial up to download heavy-handed song placement, confusing unasked backstory, and plot twists that everyone, and I mean everyone, sees coming. And a cat. There's a cat. Presenting Marvel's 2019 film that no one talks about, Captain Marvel. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. I like the blockbuster reference, but not a cat.
It is a cat.
Well, he's a cat, but they specifically say he's not a cat. But that is neither here nor there. So Captain Marvel, it did come out in 2019, and it stars Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, Jude Law, Annette Bening, Ben Mendelsohn, Lashina Lynch, and it was directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck.
What else has Anna Boden made?
I have no idea. I had never heard of them before. I had
All
to.
right.
Usually, I know the directors fairly well, and I've actually never heard of any of them. And I don't have access to my phone at the moment to look up anything else they may have directed. So, if you wanna explore that while I jump into some good things, you can do that.
Yeah, why don't you dive into the good, because I have shockingly little.
Actually, I'm not. Well, you're looking this up. I'm not going to go into my good. I'm going to give a neither good nor bad opinion. Just kind of a statement of fact. For me, it's a statement of fact. I think that a lot of the dislike of this movie in particular is not about the movie or the character. I think that Brie Larson seemed to get was super weird during the like press tours of this movie, during the promotion of this movie, and into Infinity War and Endgame. And I think that a lot of fans especially took a dislike to her, and that bled into hating the movie. They weren't, like we talked about last time, they weren't separating the art and the artist. I think that it was like, we hate Captain Marvel because Brie Larson sucks. I mean, she might, but that shouldn't necessarily color the movie.
Which was sort of the first time that Marvel fans really did that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to historically point that out. Like anything else Marvel gave us, maybe we were like, I don't know about that. This was the first time we were like, nope, don't like that one.
Yeah. But I think a lot of the hate came from the actress more so than, and not how she did in the movie, but how she was, I don't know, I guess in her personal life.
A little how she did in the movie.
Maybe, but I think that was a secondary concern. It wasn't like I dislike her. I dislike her acting job, or I don't like her delivery of these lines, or whatever it was. It was, man, Brie Larson sucks. And in Captain Marvel, she was this, that, and the other. It never started with movie critique. It always seemed to start with disliking her as a person, and then the movie stuff was secondary, which I don't think is fair.
Well, I also think it was probably one of the first times where the actor was not their character. Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. Chris Evans is very humble and nice and likable. That's very Captain America. Star-Lord's Chris Pratt, very goofy and a nice guy to be around.
Ant-Man is another one. Ant-Man and Paul Rudd is exactly like...
what you see is what you get within these characters. And so these characters are now just expansions on these actors as people. And if what we saw from Brie Larson was what we were going to get out of Captain Marvel, is like, I don't know about that, and I think you're right. I think that's a lot of what it was. Unfortunately, Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck haven't done anything that I've ever heard of, and it's not a lot. So this is their first
Big budget,
sort of
big
film.
foray
Yeah,
thing. All right.
yeah. But yeah, keep going with your good.
All right, so that was my thing. So the number one thing I feel like we need to talk about is the Stan Lee cameo. For me, was mwah,
That's my
so
that's my
good.
top good thing.
He's he's sitting on the bus when Captain Marvel is chasing down one of the Skrulls, and he's reading the script to Mallrats, which is Kevin Smith's movie from the 90s that Stan Lee was in. I thought that was, of whatever you think of all the 90s references in the movie, that I thought was perfection. It was so good.
It's also his first appearance in the MCU since his passing in 2018, and the
Yes.
Marvel crawl had him everywhere. And I got a little emotional at that one, realizing this was the first time
Yeah.
that he's not with us, and it was just very tactful, very tasteful. They did a great
It was
job.
very moving. So if you're unfamiliar, when the Marvel logo is coming up, they'll usually show clips from their movies of the different heroes, and instead, it was all clips of his various cameos from the different Marvel movies. And yeah, that was very moving. That was a great way to start it. Um, and honestly, I personally feel like that should be the thing from now on. Like that should be the one they show in all the movies. Like re-edit all the previous movies too and put that there.
Just leave it.
Yep. So I love that Stan Lee tribute. This in Marvel Comics, the Skrulls are a big deal when it comes to like the cosmic world. So I like that they were introduced. However you thought they were done, I like that they took a chance in introducing the Kree and the Skrulls, because those are, again, not necessarily for the uninitiated.
Right.
It would be like in an X-Men movie introducing the Brood. Like these are oddball alien characters that not everybody is gonna get behind. So I like that they kind of took a chance and
Right. And
introduced
it was
them.
good too. It was good too that it wasn't just the bad version of her as the
Yes,
antagonist.
which I is
Right.
one of
So
my biggest pet peeves.
it was a race. It was a threat. It was deeply comically connected.
Hmm.
I felt like they did a good job introducing them as a people. It wasn't, and obviously, if you're familiar with MCU lore, then they go on to play a pivotal role in a couple moments in Far From Home, Spider-Man. They show up in Secret Invasion. Like they used them, so it wasn't just a throwaway thing like the Dark Elves in
Yes.
Thor 2, where you never hear from them
And
again.
I think there's plans to use them in the future, in future stories, things like Secret Wars, and Avengers Doomsday, and that kind of thing. There are plans to
Yeah,
keep them involved, which I think is good, so that they're not forgettable.
sure.
Um, I thought the train chase was a lot of fun. The same chase where you see Stan Lee reading Mallrats. I thought that was had enough humor in it, had enough action in it. You had,
You mean the scene from Spider-Man 2 and the scene from Amazing Spider-Man 1 and any other copy paste train
here's why
scene?
no,
Yeah,
because
no, I agree with you.
here's why no, because most of the fight took place in the train as opposed to just on the roof. Now they were on the roof for some of it.
Oh, you're right. That was X-Men 1. Okay.
There was never a fight in X-Men 1 inside the train. It was the bad guy
I told
taking
you we're
down
going
the
to
good
fight.
guy. I
We're
liked
going to
that. I
fight.
liked that she, punches the old woman in the face, who turns out to be the Skrull.
I have a problem with that, but we'll come
But
back to
then you
that.
see her, flipping on the pole and all that stuff. I think that stuff is fun. I like that.
Well, she needed something to
This had
do.
very classic plot beats, and I didn't hate that. This was a very standard, like, fish out of water story. It didn't try to be something else. It kind of leaned into it, and I did like that. Um, Marvel was getting very serious at this time. There was a lot of heaviness in
The stakes of the world, people dusted.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that this was fun at a time when everything was super heavy. You know, the last movie we had before this, we just watched all our favorite heroes disappear into nothingness and as if they never existed. And I think that Captain Marvel served that need for fun, not only being set before all those events, but having a good time doing it. Like it was light. There
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
a heaviness to it. I thought the Fury, the whole stuff about like, what do you call your mom? Fury. What does your mom call you? Fury. If I have kids, they'll call me Fury. I like that. That
That was a
was
good
that
bit,
was fun.
especially because it paid off later when he calls him Nicholas, and that gave him the cue that
He was
perhaps he was a
not who
scroll.
he seems to be. I like that, and I like their
Yep.
banter together. I thought was really fun. I
It's
think
a that's a great dynamic.
it's very buddy cop. It's very, we don't quite trust each other. We're trying to get to know each other. They're both very good at these smart alecky one liners at each other, and I think
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. Um, I think the movie had really good humor. I know you had I know in your what do you call it, your synopsis, you kind of teased at all the song drops. I gotta say the big fight in the Skrull ship or the Kree ship when they blast No Doubt, I'm Just
No.
a Girl. Come
No.
on, that was
No.
awesome. That was
No.
fun. That was fun. I love that song. So I thought that was a lot of fun.
I also love it, and that's why I hate what they did with it.
Now, my last
Oh,
thing that I really feel strongly about that I wrote, I didn't have a lot of notes because I really was just kind of enjoying myself watching it.
you were enjoying it.
But
Yep.
one thing I really loved is a standard in so many movies, not just superhero movies, but where the your villain of the movie is calling out the hero, and it's like, you know let's fight without weapons, let's fight without
I
powers,
know what scene you're talking
let's
about.
just bare knuckle box, let's take off the gloves so we finally know who's bigger, who's better, who's the better fighter, who's the better person. And she doesn't even let him finish the sentence, and that I don't have anything I need to prove to you. That was great because it would have been so easy, because they leaned into that so many times in the movie of like, she can't control her emotions. She needs to like stop getting in her head when she's fighting and all this stuff. It would have been so easy for her to say like, "Oh, you're right. I need to prove to myself that I can beat you on level playing ground." And she didn't have to. They didn't lean into that, and I thought that was really good.
All right.
You don't agree with that?
No.
Do you not agree with it because you like that trope, or you just don't think it was done well?
It's a character issue that had there been more development of who she is and that struggle, perhaps that would have landed better. But I also have to point out that like there's a moment in Winter Soldier, which is my favorite MCU film, where Batroc looks at him and goes, "Aren't you more than a shield?" And he puts it away, and he does prove that yeah, he is more than a shield.
You're right. He's more than a shield. He's also a super soldier serum and an eternal life. And
Right. So when she blasts him, she's actually doing the thing. Like he doesn't have blasts. He doesn't have photons. So she's doing it, but then she says, "I don't have anything to prove to you." But you just
no, but she
did.
doesn't have anything to prove as far as I can beat you just on my own merit without my powers. Like, I have these powers. Why
Without
wouldn't
saying
why
it, but
wouldn't I
she
use
did
them?
it.
That's stupid. Why
Yeah,
would
but
she risk the possibility of him beating her and continuing to carry on with his plan? What, how foolish would that have been?
yeah, but we're not on bad yet.
All right, I just
I don't it didn't
okay.
land for
I
me.
feel
Let's put
like
it
it
that way.
landed because I was so used to like that kind of scene in a movie that, and it makes me like, all right, here we go. Yeah, we're gonna take off the gloves. We're gonna take off the uniform. We're gonna put down the swords, and we're gonna just see who the better bear fighter is. I don't need that every time.
If we had spent more time where she actually lost with hand-to-hand combat with him instead of 2 minutes in at the top of the movie and then completely forgot, like him calling her out actually means nothing. Because there's been no fighting back and forth. They've literally spent the entire movie talking over comms and not being together. So him being like, all right, let's do this. Why?
Right, but you got the idea that this had been happening. You know, she was with the Kree for 6 years, being trained as a Kree soldier. So I feel like even though they didn't show the fighting, you know, you didn't see them constantly sparring. I think they definitely, the fact that she shows up at his, you know, his whatever you call it, his room or his quarters, and says like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you want to fight?" That said to me like, okay, this is a regular thing that they do. Like this is a normal occurrence for them to like, we're both bored, let's spar, and he always gets the better of her. So I felt like they told you that this is a regular occurrence.
It's the moment she breaks out of her gaslighting, right? Like that's what that is. He gaslights her the
Yeah.
entire time and she breaks out of it and she's like, I don't have anything to prove to you. It would have been more impactful if she just walked away. For me,
If she walked away,
if she just walked away and
like,
did nothing.
instead of blasting him.
Right, because when you say, I have nothing to prove to you, that's actually the meekness and the humility and the strength under control. The fact that she blasts him is like, I'm better than you. Oh, and by the way, I have nothing to prove to you. Those are two very different
I have nothing to
things.
prove to you because I know I'm better, because now I know how to control this power.
I see what you're saying, but I don't want to tip my hand about all the bad things because we're still on good.
Okay. So, but that for me, I really liked that they didn't lean into the trope that would have been so easy to do.
Fair enough.
And then I know specifically I liked the song, but I liked all the 90s references. You know, she crashes to Earth into the Blockbuster. She has to go to Radio Shack to find the
That was
parts she
fun.
needs, using the payphone, wearing the Nine Inch Nails shirt and the flannel. I liked all those. I love those little references. And again, I did kind of like Wonder Woman 84. I didn't feel like it was so obnoxiously heavy-handed that it took me out of it.
Sure.
For me it didn't. But I also really, you know, it's another era that I really like. So hit me with your very few things so I can tell you how wrong you are about your bad.
There's only two other good things that you didn't cite. One requires a question that you would know and I don't. Is Flurkin a comic accurate term, or was that created for the movie?
No, that's from the comics.
Okay, good. Then it is a perfect good thing. I loved the Mother Flurkin line. I mean, you gave Samuel L. Jackson what he needed and who he is, and you did it in a comic accurate way.
And you did it without making it, you know, unkid friendly.
But we knew. And the other good thing that I have is there's a line that Jude Law has that actually perfectly encapsulates my feeling for the movie. And it's, I used to find you amusing. Let's put an end to this. I thought that was great. That perfectly summed up how I thought about the movie.
You're the worst. You're just the worst kind of person.
We've got an ad from our sponsor.
All right, well, let's go into sponsors so that I can get to telling Joey that he's the worst some more.
We'll be back in a minute. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Post-Credit Scenes, the ultimate plot twist for your mundane moments. Tired of your daily routine ending like a predictable sitcom? Spice things up with post-credit scenes, where every tired task gets a surprise twist. Just finished brushing your teeth? Boom! Suddenly a flashback to a conversation in the 70s with a random person you might have heard of. Done with that last email? Bam! A random stranger pops into your day with a cryptic message like, "The muffin is in the toaster." Perfect for those who want life to be less meh and more, whoa, the setup. Post-credits scenes. Because why should superheroes have all the fun? Product is not FDA approved. Product takes approximately 2.5 hours to kick in for effectiveness. Each sold separately. Batteries not included.
That
Yes.
was good. The whole thing was
I
good. The end was the best.
It was the end that I wanted, and I got what I wanted, and I'm very happy.
That was great. Very golf claps
I
all around.
I actually Googled and looked up classic 90s commercials, and I was like, there's something they all say. What is it? And I couldn't access that part of my brain, but it is each sold separately, batteries not included.
Please have an adult for supervision. That was good.
Yeah, that's another one.
That was a lot of fun.
That's another one.
Ask an adult before logging
Oh.
onto the internet. That was very
there
good.
was another there was another one that like McDonald's used to do, like about the toys, but I couldn't really find it.
Oh, that I don't remember. But
When I heard each sold separately, batteries not included, something unlocked in my brain where I was like, "Ooh, I'm 5."
that was great. But I love the product may take 2.5 hours to kick in. That was great. That was very good.
I got you.
Very, very
I
good.
got you.
That might be my favorite one so far.
I actually texted a couple friends. I'm like, I can't tell you what I just did, but I've peaked in life.
Yeah, this is like peak adulting moment here. That was great.
Yep.
Very well done.
Do you want me to kick off with some bad stuff?
Well, I have
Unless you want to go first.
I don't have to go first, but I only have a couple of things, and 3 of them are actually all interconnected to each other.
I'm
But
sure your bads are also my bads.
Probably.
So why don't you go first, and that way we can just take them off the playing board.
okay, well, you said you said in your introduction, in your synopsis, that where you kind of know everything is happening from the beginning. Is there anybody who didn't see Jude Law as the bad guy of this movie?
Duh.
Like that from their
Even from the first 5 seconds, you're like, wait a second.
from their first fight and conversation, I'm like, he's the bad guy. Now I knew he was the bad guy anyway, but it was like, even if I went into this blind, he's the bad guy. Like, this is again, it's a classic plot thing.
It sort of annoyed me too. Was he Jan Rog or was he Marvell?
He was Jan Rog.
Okay, so like all you had to do was a simple Google search and you know that that's the bad
Yeah.
guy, but they played it as though he wasn't.
Now, to be fair, Marvel has, changed things before where they've taken minor characters, given them more to do. They've taken characters and kind of flipped them a little bit. So I guess you could argue that he wasn't necessarily gonna be, but yeah, he was.
Which maybe that was like the whole thing with the scrolls. It's like the person you thought was good is actually bad, and the person who's bad is actually good. Maybe that was what it was, but like we have just spent 19 movies, almost 22 movies, building that who the antagonist is, and this one just wasn't very clever.
No, it worked fine because I thought he was fine as a bad guy, but you didn't need to try to trick me into thinking he was a good guy the whole time and that Marvell was the bad guy, the Skrulls were the bad guy. That worked fine. The Skrulls, are they bad or good? That was fine. But this, I wasn't fooled for a second.
It's like, we've been here, Marvel. We know what you're up to.
And also, with Jude Law, why is he the only one who's not blue? I understand why Veers is not blue, because she's actually human, just with Kree blood in her. Why are all the other Kree are blue and Jude Law is the only one not blue? Doesn't make any sense. And they don't mention, he doesn't turn blue at any point. There's no mention of like, oh, I wear the color changing things so that Veers can relate better. There's no.
Real quick for clarity, why is she Kree? Why does she have blue blood?
Because she had like a blood transfusion from his blood. They gave her a blood transfusion with Kree blood.
Okay.
So that's why she has blue blood, but it explains why she has human, a human color of skin and is not dark blue. But it doesn't explain why Yanrog is not blue. And every other Kree is blue, and he doesn't have shape-shifting abilities, so it doesn't make any sense. My other
Unacceptable.
4 bad things all have to do with the cat and Fury.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, I do have a Fury section. Go ahead.
All right, so in the comics, the cat's name is Chewie.
Yeah.
after Star Wars.
Hmm.
Now, in this, I know they probably now I wrote that down, and then it clicked why they probably named him Goose because Carol is a fighter pilot, Top Gun,
Yeah.
that kind of this has some Top Gun vibes to it, so. It was like, okay, so we're making a Top Gun reference. That's fine, but it was an unnecessary change to another popular franchise reference. I feel like you could have left it.
Like they reference in Endgame Back to the Future, Hot Tub Time Machine, all this other stuff, but you can't say. They even reference Star Wars in Winter Soldier when
I
he,
don't. Well, and also they own it, so it wasn't even a.
yeah, like keep it
It's not like
consistent.
it was a rights issue or a infringement thing. So that just seemed unnecessary.
Actually, didn't Rise of Skywalker come out the same year? I'm pretty sure it did. So
I'm
that
not. Yes, because I also saw that in the movies. So
right. So isn't
yes.
that like we don't want to give away Chewie because Chewie's gonna die? I'm just speculating. Like there's no excuse to not call him Chewie. It would be like
Yeah.
not calling her
Again, I
Carol.
think the change was just to like drive home the Top Gun
Yeah.
nostalgia reference or whatever. But again, that would have made more sense if this was an 80s set movie instead of the 90s because Top Gun was an 80s movie. So
Right.
it was just kind of whatever. Um Also the cat is stupid. The whole thing with the cat is dumb. The production of it was not good.
Yeah, the CG is not great.
The CGI was not great. The fact that so much of it like relies on the cat wasn't working for me. Now, Fury with two eyes, super unsettling. Didn't work. And Fury with hair, I can deal with. Fury clean shaven, I can deal with. Fury with two eyes just was super weird. So I'm glad that he lost his eye, but how he lost his eye,
Yep.
it is so dumb, especially because I don't know if it's in the first Avengers or if it's in Winter Soldier,
It's Winter
where
Soldier. I know what you're
it's
talking
where
about.
where he says like I trusted someone who
Last
betrayed
time
me.
I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
Right. So I'm like,
Yep.
okay, so there's a story here.
You're like,
Like, I wonder if
ooh.
they're gonna ever do maybe like, Nick Fury's Howling Commandos or
Yeah.
something, and are they gonna who is it going to be? Maybe it's the guy who runs Shield. Is he the betrayer? Was it Captain America and he didn't realize he did it? Was it who could it have been?
It's
And the
just
fact that it's not even
it's disrespectful.
Captain, it's not even Captain Marvel who does it. It's not even Talos who does it. It's none of the relationships that it would have even worked for me if it had happened earlier when they're doing the car chase and you find out that Coulson is not the real Coulson. If in that moment he cut his eye or stabbed his eye or something like that, that would have been like, right, he trusted Coulson, but it wasn't the real one, and so that lines up. That's fine. This was so dumb, so dumb.
They just nerfed him the whole movie. It's like, oh, this BA character that you think is so great, actually, he was nothing. Well, no, like you don't get the Nick Fury that we have from the origin of what we were given in this film. You just don't.
Mhm. It just, yeah, wasn't. I don't like it. I didn't like that. To me, that was the most egregious thing that this movie did, was to take something they set up. They went through a couple of movies, didn't talk about it. Here's your chance. You're doing a movie that has young Fury. He's got both eyes. What are we going to do here? I would have preferred you do nothing, and we're just still left to assume, well, sometime between Captain Marvel and the first Avenger movie, he lost that eye during a battle of some kind.
That's not the most egregious thing in this film.
It is for me because it references another movie, and you set something up. You decided here's where we're gonna pay it off, and your payoff was garbage. That so to me it was a bigger issue because now it ruins that scene in the other movie. Because anytime I watch that, I'm gonna look at it and be like, well, I know who you didn't trust. It was your pet.
This is actually a foreshadowing of what Marvel would then become in 2021 and on, where they used their past IP and the success of it and sodomized it. This is like a foreshadowing of what we would then get with, desecration of Captain America and Thor and Hulk and like all these characters that we built this universe on, and you just being like, actually, it's this. And you just pulled a rug out from under the audience in a way that I don't think we caught it at this time because we were just waiting for Endgame.
And we get excited and we're ready for a payoff, and you finally tease the payoff. And they even
it wasn't
tease the
there.
payoff with the fight where he like gets hit or
multiple times.
or so, and he's like, "Oh, it's fine. It's just a scratch. It's fine. I'm fine." And
And
it's
you're like,
like,
oh,
"Oh
that
man,
wasn't
they
it.
keep teasing. We're gonna get it at the end. I'm ready."
Yep.
Nothing.
That's a
That
big
final
problem.
Kree battle scene on the ship, that would have been a great place to do it because he was so heavily involved. Nothing.
Would have been
Nothing.
cool if like somebody was throwing the Tesseract and it like crossed him, and that's how he lost it, which gives him more like ownership
Connection to that.
in the 2012.
Yep. There, I could sit down and take
Hire me,
5 minutes.
Marvel.
I could sit down and take 5 minutes and write out 5 better scenarios without even like putting any effort into it, and it would have been better than what we got.
That's
So
it.
where's my $100,000 for doctoring a terrible scene and a terrible
Yep.
plot point?
You have any other bad stuff before I go into my my tome over here?
No, I don't. So the rest
All right.
the rest of this time is going to be me trying to refute.
We talked about Fury. In fact, my hat is very Secret Invasion Fury. That's a nod. But this movie is so bad. First off, this movie is an Avengers commercial. They made the entire film so that they could have a scene in Endgame and expect people to have like this backstory, which we just didn't need. And a perfect example of this is I did not need Spider-Man Homecoming before I saw him in Civil War. I don't buy that at this point in our comic movie realm, we needed an origin film so that the audience wouldn't be confused. I just don't buy that. And I think that's one of the reasons that this didn't work. At this point, we're over origin stories.
All right. I can see I don't fully agree, but not enough to argue with you. Like I get it. I get it, and that's fair, but maybe I have to like it separate from the rest of the
Yeah,
stuff
maybe.
at the time.
I'm going to give you choice for my categories now.
All right.
There's character issues. Maybe we can make this like a Jeopardy board. There's Carol character issues, nitpicking, comic accuracy issues.
Okay. Now shouldn't that be Nick picking?
Nice. Well done. There's female issues, and then there's story flow.
All right, you sexist. Let's hear the female issues.
This is not the first this is an MCU token. This is a bad intro to the first female-led movie in the MCU. This should not have been her. It should have been Black Widow. She's the most powerful because we say so. It's the same reason that she's not a beloved character. She's poorly written. She is shoehorned in here so we can have her in Endgame. But the prequel aspect isn't needed. And I feel like the 90s were used to try to make us like her instead of developing her as a character.
Mm.
That's why when you said, oh, I like the 90s, like, yeah, but it was used as the mechanism to get into the belovedness of a character that we don't like.
Yeah.
And she's the most powerful because we say so.
I would agree that she shouldn't necessarily have been the first one, and that it was definitely needed so that when she shows up in Endgame, we know who she is. But at the same time, I don't care. Like it was fine
Fair enough. I mean, like if you
because
don't watch the movie,
it's not like the Black Widow movie was much better.
no, I'm not saying the quality of the movie is up for debate as to which one should have been the best one. It's just that we had a established female character of years.
But maybe that's the issue. We had so many movies of her. Did we need a solo movie at that point of Black Widow? She was in every Avengers movie, two of the Captain America movies, you know.
Yeah, and to that, then we didn't need her solo movie because it just fits a chapter in between Infinity War and Endgame, and it gives us again the reason why she has blonde hair. Not really needed. But I feel like if you just watched the post-credit scene from Infinity War and from Ant-Man and the Wasp, you don't need this movie. And they heralded it as though it was this brave thing that DC had never done. I'm sorry, Wonder Woman's way better than this. And they're responding to the female-led superhero with this brave little thing, particularly in the commercial. Do you remember this, where they changed her into Hero?
Yeah.
It's like, we don't like the actress, we don't need the character, but you're telling us we do, and then you're surprised when we lash out against it. Like, you have to understand where we're coming from here.
Mm.
And I feel like the female aspect of it was it was a device used, because change the gender, keep the story, keep everything about it. It's not necessarily a good movie.
Well, I don't even know if I'd agree with that, but it's definitely it's not going to be a different movie.
Yeah, good point.
I think that would be a bigger issue, is that if you made Captain Marvel a male, the movie would be no different. So
yeah.
Again, that goes with like our representation talk. Is this fair representation if the character can be interchanged and nothing changes?
Yeah. So along that, let's go to her character issues, and these are big ones. I highly recommend the book, The Reign of Marvel Studios. It's a phenomenal book that sort of chronicles the golden era of the first three phases and gives you sort of the backstory. Highly recommend it. They talk about this thing called triangle characters. They talk how Kirk is Spock plus McCoy.
Right.
And I thought about how like that actually shows up in Star Wars too. Luke is Han plus Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
And they point out how Captain Marvel should be Tony plus Cap. It's Tony's wit and Cap's valor.
Okay.
She's not this. She's just not. I hate her banter because it's trying to be Tony and it's just not. It's so forced. It's so impersonal to her character. It's annoying when she talks during fights. I hate it.
I disagree. I thought it was fun. I thought the lines she delivered were good. I thought it wasn't as good as Robert Downey Jr. does with Iron Man, but sometimes I think he does too much.
Oh yeah, he's over the top at times, but it's never disingenuous. I just don't buy her at all.
I didn't feel that. I enjoyed her one-liners. I enjoyed all her fighting banter. It felt very Spider-Man for me because Spider-Man does that a lot too. Deadpool does that a lot.
A little bit.
So
I mean, Spider-Man does it more in the Amazing Spider-Man, which I think is probably the best witty Spider-Man. I think even better than Holland.
I just meant the character in general.
Oh yeah.
The characters in general, like Deadpool and Spider-Man, are known the most for being mouthy when they're in fights because it throws the enemy off their game. So I think that I liked it. I thought she did a good job with it.
I think the other thing I struggle with is why is she constantly told to stop being so emotional when she is one of the most stoic characters I have ever seen? She's not emotional.
Because it's the anger. You can see the rate, like you can see when her fists light up when she's feeling overwhelmed and is about to lose control.
And the second that happens, by the way, we're told emotions are bad, but we're never told why they're bad. We're told that they're bad.
Well,
That was a major issue with the film. Nobody says why.
because I think you can infer that her having emotions is bad, because if she releases and lets go, she'll unleash the full power of the, the core that's inside her. So
Which we'll get to in a
I think
second.
you can infer that, the reason that Yanrog keeps telling her you need to keep your emotions in check is because he knows that with the release of that power could also come the release of her memory, and then he'll be found out before he can use her to his own end, you know?
I suppose. I needed a little bit more. Like you spend so much time developing
You needed
the
it just
broken
handed to you
bond.
on a little plate. Like, here's
No, but
why.
they spend so much time telling her use this, not this. Okay, why? Because it's not spoon fed. I agree with you. It's not just handed out there, but similar to Wonder Woman 84, it's the cultural commentary about women being oppressed. But again, you haven't developed the character for me to understand why that even
But that's
matters.
also a standard plot point of like using your head, not your heart, and then you find out that using their heart
You need to use your heart.
is what makes them a hero. But you see that in plenty of movies about someone training to be a soldier, someone training to be some kind of fighter, someone training to be a hero, is always like, you're in your head, like you know the moves, but you don't feel the moves. You know what I mean? It's, you're letting your emotions get the best of you. So I think that it might be a recycled plot beat, but I don't
I'll
think
give
that
you that.
necessarily makes it a bad one.
Fair enough. I didn't like it,
Oh, and that's
but
and that's
fair
fine,
enough.
but I don't think that could be something you can fully argue makes the movie bad, because it's been in plenty of other movies that work just fine.
Again, with the character development thing, she never loses as being Captain Marvel. There's no loss. She's just good at what she does. I feel like the movie tells us that her big loss is that men have told her entire life that she's not good enough, and that's the thing that she needs to overcome. That's not character development. That's just a handicap that it's like a handout that you're giving to the character, like, oh, you had some opposition.
Mm.
Whereas like Tony, Cap, the very real loss of family, of a loved one. Like, why doesn't she have that? I get that it's different.
She lost her whole life. She lost 6 years of her life, her career, her best friend, her family, her home on Earth. How is that to be used and manipulated because of an accidental power absorption? So why?
But I feel like she's not fighting to get that back.
Because she doesn't know she's missing it. You see her fighting to get it back as the memories come back to her. She can't.
Well,
She
then why
can't.
does she leave
She
Earth?
can't get back to fight something. She can't fight to get something back that she doesn't know was lost.
And then to me, if that's the case, which it very legitimately could be, if that's the case, then it's like, well, then you've got too much going on in the movie, because we either need to fight the bad guys, fight the gaslighting, fight the patriarchy, and also get back everything we need. And the resolution would have come if she got back the life that she lost. But she immediately then gets off Earth. And I feel like they had to do that so that Endgame made sense. And this is really where the complication of telling 15 stories at once really then comes on the nose. She doesn't have resolution. She just leaves. And they pay that off later, right? They're like, where have you been? They say that in Endgame. She's like, you're not the only one who's been struggling. There's other worlds who have been dealing with Thanos. Well, that's fine. But like, if the point was to get back what you lost, you never did that.
She did. Which she discovered who she was, because the whole thing with if you haven't seen the movie, all of the Kree speak to a being known as the Supreme Intelligence, which is essentially like their deity, and it takes the form of someone important to you. And for
Yeah.
her, she doesn't recognize the person that it takes the place of. I would imagine that most people recognize, a lost loved one, someone, when she says that to Yanrag, like, is it your brother? Is it the person who trained you? Is it your childhood friend? Whatever it is. And I think that that starts her on the journey of like the first thing I need to know is like, why do I see this woman in my dreams? Why is she the form the supreme intelligence takes when I meet with them? What is the deal with that? Like, who is this person? Why are they important? Why am I dreaming about them? Who, what, why do I have no memory of my childhood, where I come from? Was I always Cree? Am I some other species? I think that from the very beginning, that journey starts. And as things get cracked open, it's like, oh, there's more for me to discover about who I am. Why am I in this photo on a planet that I don't ever remember being on? Oh, wait, I'm from this planet. Okay, so who is this person? This person, like, seems like they should be important to me. Well, yeah, it was your best friend for years. You trained and, did all this stuff together. So I feel like that journey was there if you were looking.
I guess I wasn't looking.
That again, I'm not saying that you're doing this, but I think that that's the problem that most people have with this movie is that they didn't like Brie Larson, and that colored everything else.
I didn't even know who she was before she got cast.
Oh, she was in Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And then in Kong.
Yeah,
Skull Island.
Skull Island. Yeah, she was in that too.
Nitpicking, I hate Ben Mendelsohn's lisp. That voice choice. I hate it. I have no idea what he's saying.
He actually, that's not even a voice choice. That's just, if you ever saw Ready Player One, that's just how he sounds.
Really?
His real voice is...
No, he's got a little bit of a lisp, but it sounds like he's got cotton balls in his mouth.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Because I heard him in Rogue One. He's totally legible in that one. But in this, it's just like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's put on a little more when he's in Skrull form, because you don't have that problem when he's the S.H.I.E.L.D. director.
Right.
So, okay, yeah, that's fair.
I don't like I like the Skrull inclusion. I don't like that they're not bad guys. I felt like that was a bait and switch, because if you're asking your audience to dive into a comic accurate depiction of something, and then you bait and switch them into being like, oh, actually, these are the guys you should root for. It's like, well, wait a second. At this point, they had announced they were going to do Secret Invasion in some form. Or if they hadn't, we at least thought, you said Skrulls, that means Secret Invasion is possible, which is a whole story arc of not knowing who to trust, and the Skrulls are bad. So the fact that now they're refugees is sort of like, I don't know.
Well, a sect of them are refugees. There may be, so you could make it. I understand that. I do understand that, but you could make it to where, okay, so the Kree started this war against the Skrulls, who maybe were a peaceful people, a peaceful planet. But now some have turned radical, where it's like, we can't trust anyone. The Kree came and invaded. Look at what all these other races have done in the universe. So we can't trust anybody. Earth seems to have, the most powerful beings. So let's make sure that we have them on our side. Infiltrate. I feel like there's ways you could do it by like radicalization. They don't necessarily have to be an entire race of terrible people or terrible creatures, whatever.
Sure.
I'm just saying there are story ways around it. But I do agree that was kind of lame.
Speaking of story, this is my second to last segment. And the story is very frustrating for me. It's a little hard to track from a storytelling perspective. It's not impossible. It's not the worst. It is not Memento, Christopher Nolan's movie. I will say that flat out. But it opens in the aftermath of an explosion, about how she got her powers, and then we're mid-fight in a sequence, and then we're on a mission, and then she's getting brain flashbacks, then we're under Skrull interrogation, like constantly talking about how she's not good enough, she's not strong enough, she has to prove herself. Like, I think Talos actually says it. Am I the only one who's confused here? It was a little all over the place until about half.
That was honestly a standard when I was looking at, other reviews, just to get an idea of like what other critics thought of the movie. That was something that was said kind of across the board, was that the plot was convoluted. I don't know how to explain why I don't agree. I just seem to follow it without any trouble. Like I wasn't confused at any point. It didn't seem convoluted or overpacked to me. It seemed again, my only issue with the plot is that it was, and it's not even an issue. It's that it was a very standard. It was a very cookie cutter plot of that kind of story. But
Sure.
I'm fine with that. I didn't really get the convolution that other people seem to have.
I think primarily if people were going at it from like this is an origin story and you need to explain, like you spent the money, the budget, and the time to put this where you did in the MCU so that I can understand this character a little bit. And then you got me in the movie theater right before Endgame, which is really what I want. And now I'm sitting down and we're all over the place. I think that's probably the emotion that's under it. It's not really
Okay.
like oh, I can't track it. Well, sure, I can track it. That's fine. But from a linear standpoint of developing my connection to this character, you didn't start off on a good foot.
So it seems like the biggest problem that you have, or that people in general have with this movie, is the behavior of the actor and its placement in release order.
Oh no, I'm not done yet.
I know, but I'm just saying, it seems like everything can boil down to like Brie Larson. We don't maybe like as a person, or how she handled the press of this character. Fine. And this was placed in between two movies that we really wanted. So it felt unnecessary. Maybe if it was released previously, it would have been fine. But it just feels like
This is really repressed trauma and anger at Marvel for making us wait a year.
that's what it feels like. It just feels like victim blaming.
All right. There is zero explanation as to why a mere human can receive and absorb the power of the Tesseract and not die. Because Red Skull touches it and there's a serious issue. They even say, "You're glowing." And she goes, "I'll explain later." And she never does.
Well, because that's a dramatic irony. It's dramatic irony. Like
I
she doesn't
guess.
need to. We, the audience, have the
Ugh.
explanation. The character, we can just
You see my
assume.
eye roll?
We could just assume that the other characters get the information at some point, but we don't need to. We just watch the movie. We don't need to see her now explain what we just watched.
Okay, so like, riddle me this. Let's move on to this one. You talked about the train scene. She punches a woman in the face.
Yeah.
Because what does she know?
Well, she knows that there's a Skrull who could be anyone.
So then why is she confused when the neighbor shows up? Hesitant and paranoid. How come she can tell sometimes, but she can't tell other times? Riddle me that.
The only, again, I'm just trying to make up a reason it could have worked. Is
Don't you do it. Leave it alone.
all right. It was bad. I won't say anything about it. No,
Thank
the
you.
only thing that I think could be the reason is that she had spent time up to that point tracking this particular scroll. Maybe that had something to do with it that we, the audience, didn't see. Although usually, I feel like because with Fury they did the, great job, Nicholas, and that was like for us, the audience, to
Right.
be like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's not who he says he
Right.
is. So it would have been something if she saw like, oh, that old lady is bleeding right where the other one was bleeding, or there's something off about the morphing, like something looks unnatural here. But I think it was just an excuse for the comedy of punching an old woman and having everybody's reaction to like, whoa, did you see what she just did? Oh, wow, that old lady is doing crazy backflips and things too. That shouldn't be happening.
Probably. There's this whole montage where she breaks out and gets her powers. They say, "Without us, you're weak, you're helpless, you're nothing, you're only human." What is the message here? That the human part of her is not enough and the Kree thing is what makes the difference? Like, then there's this montage of women getting up and breaking through. Like, it doesn't tell you how or what she actually taps into, and it has nothing to do with being spoon-fed something. Is the message that she's a girl boss or that she's just human and that's the superpower?
I think
I don't get it.
Probably a little both end. I think they wanted it to be that she's a girl boss because I think that part of the point of doing this was to empower women and for women to see, a hero that they can see themselves in. But I think in general, it was not being um, confined by the what the other characters thought of her, because this had been her whole life of like, you can't be a soldier like that, you can't fly this kind of plane, you can't break these other barriers because of who you are, because of where you came from, because of your perceived inability. So the fact that it's like, she's fighting this war that is between two powerful alien races with these crazy abilities, you can't possibly, be in this kind of scrap because you're only human. Being human is enough. Being who I am is enough. It's not that
Maybe.
shouldn't be because other people. Hulk is only human. He uses the stones and doesn't die. Now Tony die Tony
Yeah, but he's
Tony
got
dies, but
radiation.
he also uses them to make a big old wish. So I mean,
Sure, but she contains the power. Right? Like radiation is what gives Hulk his power. Tony dies almost instantly, but like she comes in contact with it and then absorbs
but
it
maybe
and
the,
now is a
maybe
character.
that's the difference, is that the power is inside of her as opposed to an object that she's not picking up the tesseract and like pointing it and using it like a gun. The
To quote Chris North, it's OMG science.
I mean, it is, but
It
I'm also
is.
fine with it, because why
I'm
why
not.
why should Bruce Banner have survived the gamma radiation blast? Why is Chris Evans the only one that the super soldier serum worked correctly in? Because he's a nice person? Yeah, okay. So that's just as OMG sciency as any of the other origin
Well,
things.
I guess the setting of it just bothers me because like it works for her because she's the her. And we need her to be the most powerful superhero, but there's no reason for it. There's no reason that we should like her. There's a lack of development with her character. We've said it in the 90s because ha ha. And you used Nirvana? That's an assault.
When did they use Nirvana?
They played Come As You Are at some point.
Oh,
Anyway, let me keep going. I think it's stupid that no superheroes were found for 13 years,
like between the end of this
right?
movie and the
From
beginning of.
Iron Man.
I mean, there were.
There's
I mean, there
nothing.
weren't any.
Watch. Let's timestamp this moment. I guarantee you that in the multiverse saga or whenever they start the mutant saga, we're gonna find out a lot between 95 and 2008.
Hmm.
Mutant
Oh,
wise,
mutant wise,
I think
yeah.
that
All right.
I think they'll do that.
Yeah.
I think the pager's dumb. You're telling me the events of Avengers, Age of Ultron, Civil War, none of that's enough to page her? I think a lot of people felt that way. I'm not the only one.
No, I'm sure that I won't even argue that. I feel like there's an excuse you could make, but I won't even attempt with that.
You don't have to. I think Ronan is a wasted character. I think he was a super bad guy in Guardians, and you needed a touchstone to something.
Yeah.
And because it was up in the stratosphere, it was like, we'll throw Ronan in there. And then he says something stupid like, "Oh, or, what are we afraid of? The core?" He goes, "The woman." Like, come
But
on.
also,
You wouldn't have said that if it was a
this takes
man.
place before Guardians, so Ronan went through an unseen, development.
I know, but why did he say the woman?
Because again, I feel like these species can sense the power that's in them, because it's a power that they're after. It's a power that they use. It's an element that's more natural to them than Earth. So I feel
The
like it's
girl
something
power.
that they can sense exists. I feel like Thor and Loki have that too. Like they're kind of aware of like the change in atmosphere or whatever when they're around the ether or the tesseract.
I guess. 2 more things, and then I will give it a rest. I don't think the 90s works. Like I said, I feel like it's a plot device that places us somewhere, but primarily it doesn't work because it finds itself in the 90s. And here's what I mean by that. It is not rooted in the 90s. It finds itself there. There's a thing they wanted to do, but the first 23 minutes of the movie displaces us to where if you don't know what you're watching, you'll feel like you're watching Guardians, you're watching Wakanda, you're watching Infinity War. The technology is almost the same. And so when she lands in Blockbuster, it doesn't mean anything for the rest of the movie other than it's just nostalgia and queued up soundtracks.
It was fun.
It can be fun, but
I mean, that's fine, but it was still fun.
yeah.
It didn't have to be set in at any particular time necessarily.
Well, and I think that's why it's like, oh, it's the 90s version of the Avengers. It's the 90s. It's the 90s. No, it wasn't. She landed in a Blockbuster, went to a Radio Shack, and somebody dialed up on AOL Instant Messenger. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the biggest assault and my major issue with this movie, and if you don't agree with me on this, I don't know how we remain friends.
All right. Come on. Let me have it.
Her call sign is not Avenger.
Oh.
It never was. It's never mentioned. It's bad. It answers a question no one asks. And it's just like, ha, it's all about her. No, it's not, because we forget about her for like 20 years.
Yeah.
She's off planet. And it's retconning something that just, no, I'm sorry. But to me and to 98% of the audience who had no comic connection to these things, the Avengers are Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hulk, and Hawkeye. That's where Avengers started. And they call themselves the Avengers. I mean, Fury says it's the Avenger Initiative. There was an idea, blah, 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 but they embody it.
Yeah.
And like, he's naming it because of a photo and a nod to her. Like, no.
Yeah. No, I see, I don't feel so strongly that it's bad. It just, I don't care. And I don't, it's not that I don't care as in, I don't care. I like it anyway. Like, it just, it was unnecessary. Yes. It was a weird pull, because you're right. That was never her comic book call sign. Otherwise I think she would have taken the name Captain Avenger or something like that.
Or Vers.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
The Vers Initiative.
Veers. It's pronounced Veers.
They can't speak anyway. I've talked for long enough. What kind of spiritual things have you found in this cinematic adventure?
Well, we were kind of touching on it a little bit, and it's kind of about what your identity is rooted in. All right, so we have Veers being told, you're a Kree soldier.
Vers.
It's all right. This is not going to be another Dark Side, Dark Seed situation.
It could be if we want it to.
It could be, but it's not. It's not.
Carry on.
You see, I was on a roll here, you jerk.
Keep going.
That's what your identity is rooted in.
Rooted in being a jackwagon.
Hush. She's being told, Captain Marvel, Carol, is being told that her identity is rooted in being a soldier, being a Kree warrior, fighting the Skrulls. Then on Earth, she's being told, you were, a leader in this project. You were a soldier who, fought so hard to get to where you were. You were a family member that disappeared. You were an aunt that disappeared. You're a girl boss. You're a hero. You're not worthy. She's being told all these different things. So what is her identity really rooted in? And if we look at that, what is our identity rooted in? Our identity isn't rooted in, our identity is not defined by the people around us and by what we're called. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a program director for special needs individuals, I'm a podcaster, I'm a geek, I'm a movie fan. These are all things that make up who I am, but they're not my identity. They're just parts of me. And they're wonderful parts of me, but that's all that they are. My identity is found in what God calls me. So if God calls me his child, if God calls me no longer a slave, God calls me beloved, God calls me heir and friend, that needs to be what my mountain is based on. That needs to be what my identity is based on. So who I am, it has to matter more what God calls me than what the world around me calls me, because that may change. I will
Yeah.
always be a child of God. I may not always be someone's friend. I may not always work at this place, have this relationship, be defined by these interests. And I think that, given that we were talking about representation and how you identify and seeing that identity on a screen to be represented, I think that those aspects of people are important and they matter, but your identity ultimately is in the fact that God defines who you are. And who you are to him is his creation and his beloved and who he wants closest to him. So
Mm.
for me that immediately like sparked this whole idea of man, like she has so many things that define her identity and she doesn't know what she is. Neither do we. We have so many things that are calling that, but if we believe that we're a child of God, that's the identity that matters.
Yeah. That's good. She's got this throwaway line. Well, it's not really throwaway, but they didn't develop it as much as they could have.
Mhm.
She says, "I'm not here to fight your war. I'm here to end it." And at that moment, there's this transition from engaging in conflict to moving towards a resolution. Like she's no longer going to play the battle and engage with the fighting. She's going to bring resolution to the disagreement, to the argument, to the fighting. And the verse that popped up for me is Romans 12:18, which is, if it's at all possible with you, as much as depends on you, live at peace with everyone.
Mhm.
And I think we like that idea. We like the idea of just living at peace with everyone. I'm going to be a nice person. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But to quote, Age of Ultron, sometimes to make an omelet, you got to crack some eggs. And our problem, I think, particularly as followers of Jesus just coming out of an election season, is that we love conflict.
Oh, we
We
love
really
it.
do. We really do. We love an argument. We love a war. We love a battle, something where we win. And I wish that we as followers of Jesus could take that desire and put it towards something more beneficial, more useful, more profitable. But not many people want to build something. People want to tear, because it's so easy to tear something down. It is so much work to build something up. And building something up, particularly as followers of Jesus, requires humility, but it also requires strength, and it requires admitting when you're wrong, but it also requires blazing forth with vision. Like, it's easy to complain and to fight and
Mhm.
to do the very easy work of essentially just giving into apathy. You have the privilege of arguing. But a lot of us, myself included, need to just engage a little further with that uncomfortable feeling, that desire for something better, and make something better, to make peace. Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers,
Mhm.
not blessed are those who argue other people into their point of view. No,
But
like
also, he
sometimes
doesn't
this is
say,
work.
blessed are the people who want peace and do nothing about it.
Exactly. And I think that if followers of Jesus possessed another gear, that, yeah, sure, complain about it because it's wrong and it's not right and there's injustice in the world and maybe it's not your preference, but build something better. Don't just fight the war, end it. I think we would be better off.
That's great. So this is another positive. Look at these two really deep spiritual truths that were pulled from a movie that you say was so bad. But you're right.
Hey, even in a pile of garbage, you can find a diamond.
I don't know how many piles of garbage you've looked through in your life, but
Oh, you're missing out, man.
I've never found a diamond, I gotta say.
I will rate this. Um, it sucks. I think it's forgettable.
Okay.
I don't think you should watch it. I'm mad about it for all the flawless reasons I gave, of which you had no refute. To me, it's a Kilmer. It's forgettable. I didn't enjoy it. I think there's a lot of problems with it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those are unfortunately due to our culture of complaining about things. I wish there was something better. I wish from this point on, her character got better and was better written. Unfortunately, as you can see within Endgame and the Marvels and anything she's done after this, it just hasn't really been that great. And unfortunately, I think it's because of the foot that this got off to. But as a whole, as a video available at Blockbuster, do not rent it. Do not incur the late fee, and do not download it on the World Wide Web.
Well, I couldn't disagree more because I had a lot of fun with it, and I know that I'm in the minority of this, but I thought the story was standard, but it was fun. I liked her as Captain Marvel. I liked the character. I liked the humor. I liked the action. I thought it was just a fun origin movie. Could it have come at a better time in the timeline? Maybe.
Yes.
But I still had a really good time. For me, it's a bail. It is.
Whoa.
It is a bail all the way because I just think it's fun. It's just fun.
BAIL, like bail out of it?
No, BALE as in our third one down. It's good. It's good. I had a good time and I would watch it again.
Wow. I'm legitimately shocked at that rating.
Again, I thought it was a fun movie that came when things were getting real heavy, real serious, and it was a much needed break.
It's a good perspective to have. But audience, what'd you think? What would you rate this? Leave us a comment. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Drop us a comment. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
It actually does make a difference. You can also comment on Spotify. We're available pretty much wherever you can find content. And thank you for pouring into this community. But I would love to hear anybody else who says this is a bail.
Listen, I will shout you
The
up.
cheese might stand alone.
I will give you a shout out on our next episode if you back me up, and I will thank you publicly and voraciously. But listen,
until then,
I think it's time to wrap up and time to go.
Yes. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sanctum Sanctorum podcast.
Yes, thank you very much. And remember, kids, sometimes cosmic cubes of unknown origin can be stored in lunchboxes from the 70s. So make sure you have one around. You never know when you might find it useful.
Oh, and by the way, the Tesseract in the opening crawl, because I did go and look at it, it's positioned as a universe-conquering device.
Well, that's why Jan Rog wanted it.
Meanwhile, the Mind Stone over to Loki like it's a lunchbox from the 70s.
But the Mind Stone itself is not a universe-conquering device. It allows you to mind control people. You need, like, to me, the Reality Stone, that's universe-conquering. The Power Stone, universe-conquering. The Time Stone,
It's
even.
the other thing. It's not even the Power Stone. It's the Space Stone. It gets you from one place. It's a cosmic GPS cube. And now Captain Marvel can fight people with it.
You're a hater.